Today we're going to start lesson 4, or mini lesson 4, however you want to think about it. We're going to talk about pronouns. I'm going to start on the main slide deck and then go to the shortcut one. I feel like it will be the same thing. I could be wrong. It will be the same thing, but it's okay. So topics in this lesson are personal pronouns, and in Coptic we have two types, independent and dependent. We have demonstrative pronouns and determiners, and then we have possessive determiners and pronouns. So the personal pronouns, by the way, just for definitions, demonstrative pronoun and determiners means this, that, these, those. Possessive is like my, your, his, her, just for terms. A personal pronouns is I, you, he, she, it, we, they, which is right here. Personal pronouns I, you, he, she, it, we, they, and they're object forms. So object forms meaning me, him, her, us, them. These are personal pronouns. In Coptic, there are independent and dependent forms. Independent form means it's a word. So I told you guys before how Coptic was written in one string of letters. There was no spaces. So you could debate whatever you want to debate, but in current systems of spacing, the independent form is almost always separated, and the independent form has a stressed syllable, if that makes sense, because it's its own word. The dependent form is usually a prefix or a suffix or any type of affix. And I put here bold letters. Notice the letters used here, they will repeat. I will reiterate them both here and when I jump to the other section. So the dependent form, it's not a whole word, it's just a suffix or a prefix. That's the key thing, the dependent form. The independent form is where it's its own word. Pronouns do not take articles. Okay, pronouns do not take articles. And when I say pronouns here, I mean personal pronouns. So we learned articles last time. We put those on nouns, not pronouns. So like in English, you can't say the he, or the it, or the I, meaning me. So same thing in Coptic. Terms to get out of the way. First person is I or we. Second person is you. In English, you tends to be both singular or plural. And third person is he, she, it, or they. All three persons have singular and plural, which is shown here. I is singular, we is plural. You is singular, and then you plural is not written here because in English it's, and then he, she, it is singular, they is plural. That bullet point is for Coptic, if that wasn't clear. So in Coptic, they're singular, plural, both. In Coptic, you plural is a different form, just like Spanish, you plural is a different form. And then gender will only play a factor for the singular of second and third person. So first person, it's the same. Second person, it's different. Third person, it's different. And that's only in the singular, similar to the pronoun, the articles. For the articles, when it was plural, we couldn't tell the gender anymore. So similar with the pronouns here. So these are the independent pronouns, and I highlighted certain letters. Let me cycle back to this. So this is stuff I already said, right? So Coptic has first, second, third person, like most languages. Gender comes into play for singulars of second and third. There's two types of pronouns, dependent and independent. Dependent acts like an affix, meaning a prefix, infix, or suffix. So prefix is something put at the beginning of a word. Infix is something put in the middle of the word. Suffix is something put at the end of the word. Independent is its own word, and these are some key letters. It's imperfect, if that makes sense. These stars, I'm pretty sure, led to a speaker note, but the PowerPoint for this messed up, which is why I'm doing it on PDF. This one's tricky, okay? So for first person singular, which is I, it's either T or E. That will be the key letter for you, T or E. And you can already see how that's a problem because we just learned last lesson T was the key letter for feminine singular the, or just feminine singular, right? And you'll learn later when you get used to Coptic, the letter T is also the word for give. So if you say I give, it's TT. For masculine, second person masculine. So for you, but one you, that's a guy, or if you're talking to an object for some reason, it happens to be masculine gender, it's K, right? It's K. So if you remember, I taught last week the difference between P and what we now call P is there's extra puff of air. So the difference here between kappa and ki is also the extra puff of air. So it's either k or k. So that they will differ. They mean the same thing, but they will differ based on what sound follows it. Just like how P became P or F, depending on the sound after it. The pattern tends to be for second person feminine to put nothing, but there are other times where you do put something, and then we'll cover that when we get there. It'll make sense in a second. For him or he or it, if the noun in reference is masculine in Coptic, the key letter is an F. Fi. But if we were talking about a her or it, if the gender is feminine, the key letter then is a sima. It'll make sense in a second. We, or first person plural, is either, now this is going to be confusing, but it'll make sense. It's either 10 or just the letter N. No. For you plural, it's either ten or just 10. So what's the difference? The 10 is usually if it's a full prefix, if there's nothing before it. If there's anything before it, you drop the te. So what's an example? A word for us in Coptic is eron. So it literally means to us. So ero is a form for two, and then the letter N is us. So for second person plural, you see it's either te-ten or ten, the same thing as the one above it. If it's a prefix, you would put te-ten, but if it were anything except a prefix, you would drop the first te and put 10. But also second person plural is a bit weird. So for example, if you want to say with you, meaning with you all, you say nemo 10. But that would be this 10, not this 10, because this 10 is only if it's a prefix. If I want to say with us, it would be neman. So neman versus nemo 10. Nem, if you guys remember, means with or and. So since we're learning here, these are pronouns that happen to be prefixes or suffixes. You could shove some of these at the end and it'll make it something else. So for example, when we say hail to you, full of grace, hail to you who has found grace, hail to you who has given birth to Christ, the Lord is with you. And for the Saturday Theotokea, we say ipshois shop neme. So it's nem, and then second person feminine is what this is one of the exceptions where we don't put nothing. So we just put the letter eya, which in Coptic is pretty much nothing if you want to think about it like that. So neme means with you, but if you want to say with you to a guy, you say nemak. If you want to say it for me, you would say nemi. So I didn't say this earlier. T is if it's the prefix form, and then E is if it's elsewhere, but there are exceptions. So that's why the star is here. So the stars are for the exceptions. Now, for plural third person, which is they, this is where it starts getting weird. The first instance on the left, again, is only if it's the prefix itself, which is usually less common, especially for third person, for whatever reason. And that's se, the two letters se. So there's a difference between se and just se. And then if it's anywhere except a prefix, it becomes u. And that's supposed to be ha. I apologize for the font I picked. U. But I put parentheses on the o. Why? There's a common, let me phrase this properly. So contractions. So in English, if you want to say do not, you could just say don't. You just drop the o and not. For cannot, you could just say can't. For I am, you could just say I'm. So there are contractions in some languages, and in Coptic, there's a contraction where you could drop the o in the u. But the funny thing is that contraction is only in spelling. The pronunciation is exactly the same. So what do I mean? Let me see if I'm able to draw on this thing. So for example, that letter a is a form to make it the past tense. So what if I want to say they did do something? So since this will come first, we'll learn later the actual forms, but the past tense comes first. Then you have to put the pronoun. Let me see if I can erase this fast. No, okay. That circle is staying. You put the pronoun. So it can't be this one because it's not first anymore, so it has to be this one. So technically it would be au, or that's the current pronunciation. The old pronunciation, if it's written like this, it would be ow. So it would be an A with a W. Ow. But these are a lot of vowels in a row. So what they did was they just dropped the middle one. So then you get this. But that was also pronounced ow. So it was literally just to make it faster for them to write, but it was saying the same thing. So that's why this, oo, or just the letter ha, because it will do the same function. So if there is a vowel, you would drop the o. If there is no vowel, you won't drop the o. So what's an example for not dropping the o? So we mentioned earlier, with us or to us is eron. For with them or to them, not with, to. So this prefix means to. So for to them, it becomes erou. Oh, I need right here. Erou. So here we don't drop the O, even though that's a vowel. So when I say vowel, I mean the weird exceptions I taught you guys before for where in the current pronunciation becomes a V. Ironically, that's when it should be a W because of weird linguistics. So for alpha or aya or rarely eta. So here's some examples. So color coding. If it's blue here, I mean second person. If it's red here, I mean first person. If it is yellow here, I mean third person. If there is a brighter gray outline, I mean singular. If there is a darker outline, I mean plural. It's convoluted, but it gets the job done. So here we have independent pronouns. We have enthok. This is the key letter, enthok. So we said it earlier, K is second person singular masculine. So this is the word for you, speaking about one guy. Entho, there's nothing there. Nothing we said was second person singular feminine. Then there's enthof, which is he or it because it's third person singular masculine. And then enthos would be third person singular feminine. So that's her or it. Anon, so not enthon, but anon. So first person gets the ano prefix for lack of words. But remember I said first person singular is has exceptions. So the word for I in Coptic is anok, which again, that last letter is not T or I, but that's just how it works. It's Anok, but for us it's Anon, and because at the end we drop the Te. So Anon, Enthoten, for you all, and then Enthou is they. So that is as the independent pronouns. So these are the independent pronouns listed, except I left out Anok because it didn't follow the pattern. So this is the examples with patterns. But these are examples of prefix and suffixes. So if you want to say I believe, you say T nahti, because the T here means I. And it's the beginning, it's the prefix. There's nothing before it. But if you say I nahti, so remember I said if you want to do past tense, the A comes first. Because the A comes first, you can't use T. T is only if it's the first thing. So you use E. So I by I aminyota. So it becomes I nahti, is I believed. You are blessed. So this is one of those examples where the subject is a suffix, which is rare, but this is one of those examples, and this word is fairly common, so it's good to get used to it. Ouneyatk. And you guys might be familiar with this word from the gospel response, Ouneyatu. So realize it ends with U, and U, if the thing will function, is here. U is third person plural, so it's them. So if Ouneyatk means you are blessed, talking to a guy, Ouneyatu means they are blessed, talking about the saints of the day. Knasotem means you will listen, so it's still a K sound, even though it is a key. And the difference between these two, like I said before, is that one of them has an extra puff of air, one pronounced in the old pronunciation. So this is Oneyatk, and this is Knasotem. So it's like the first C sound or K sound in an English word. So if you say kit versus skit, there's a difference between the two K sounds. Another thing you could do with the pronouns that are prefixes, so the dependent pronouns, you could also put them with certain prepositions, and then that could make a phrase. So if you want to say they are in, you just shove the word for they with the word in. So the word for in is chen, and then the word for they, if it's a prefix, is se. So se chen means they are in, or ti chen means I am in. And then in him, so this is as a suffix. So enchit is it's a form. I don't want to go into details yet. It is a form of the word chen, but it takes a suffix. So enchitif or enchit is in him. We'll get there in a second. All right. So these are all of the independent pronouns, and notice I colored the key ones, the key letters. They happen to be the same letters because the other one was the pattern sheet. So we have Anok is I, Enthok is you to a guy, Entho is you to a girl, Enthof is he or it, Enthos is she or it, Anon is we, Enthoten is you all, or just translate as you, but it's plural, and then Enthou is them. Notice I didn't put Jenkins, it's okay. These are the ones I mentioned before. T, K, K, Te. Oh, I didn't mention Te. So these are if the pronouns are prefixes. These are if the pronouns are prefixes. You might ask, what are the red ones? The red ones repeat from before. So here, whatever is red here is also red here because that is a pattern. So if you want to say I, but it's a prefix, it's T. If you want to say you, but it's a prefix, it's K or K. So we have kappa and ki, and notice they both make a K sound because they used to make a pair, just like we talked about last lesson with B and phi, which would actually have been B and P. And if you remember, you would use the aspirated or the P with an extra H in it. You would use that before the specific letters, which we abbreviated as Vilmanur. So that was vita, lola, mi, ni, ro, a consonantal iota and a consonantal u, meaning ya and wa. So those are the sounds where you would have an extra puff of air to make it whatever, I guess, more smooth for them to pronounce. So that would use a key instead of a kappa. And the example we had earlier was you will listen, and you will listen. The word for will is na. Na starts with the na sound. Na is one of the Vilmanur letters, so it becomes ki. So kna or ekna in the current system. For you to a girl, you say te for the prefix. Do I have an example? There is a hymn for Kiak where we say you will give birth or you will bear, and it's tera misi or tera voki. So the ra there is a weird form of will. Will is normally in Coptic na. If you're gonna say like will something, like I will do this, you would put na. But after te, for whatever reason, it becomes ra. I don't have an explanation. So teravoki means you will conceive, which we have in the Kiak doxology. And then he and she are the same, fa, sa, and then ten, to ten, and se. I explained that in the other sheet. For the suffixes, it's e for I, which I mentioned before. Ka is the same. Here I expand because it's not a summary slide deck. So for second person feminine, it's either nothing or you add an eya, which I mentioned before. Like if you want to say the Lord is with you, nem is with, and then you could shove a pronoun suffix after it. So nemme or nemme technically is with you, and there are others, which they're really almost a case-to-case basis. So for example, we had before Enclitic is in him, but if you want to say in you to a girl, you make it Encliti. Now you need to make sure you don't confuse that with first person because that's a suffix at the end. So it's almost like it is an aya at the end, but the T with the aya at the end, it functions like T, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't make sense, but it's okay. I don't know I have ten here. It is okay though. So we have n and then ten and then u. I'm sure there's some rare form I don't recall where the te stays. If we run into it, we run into it. All right, so that's all personal pronouns. For if they're the subject. So if they're an object, well, let me rephrase that. These are if they're the subject. If they are an object, you are likely going to use these sets. So like I said before, if you want to say to us, it would be eron. So that's an object form. But you would not do anon, or you would not do sha anon, for example. That's not normal to do. That's like in English if you want to say to we. It just doesn't work. So demonstrative pronouns or determiners, it means this or that. The near demonstrative is this, the far demonstrative is that, literally meaning near. So if there are two apples in the room, the one that's closer to me, I'll say it's this apple, and the one's farther away from me, I'll say that apple. Why does the title say pronoun / determiner? The pronoun stands as its own word, similar to a noun, but it does not take an article, because like I said before, pronouns don't take articles. The near demonstrative determiners replace... Okay, wait, let me... Step by step. The second bullet point is when it's a demonstrative pronoun. The next bullet point is when it's a demonstrative determiner. So if you remember, the determiners act like the word the. So if I want to say this apple, that would be a near demonstrative determiner because I'm saying this apple, I'm not just saying this. If I'm saying I'm eating this, the this is acting as a pronoun. But if I say I'm eating this apple, this is a determining which apple I'm talking about. So the near demonstrative determiner in Coptic, it would replace the article. So there's an example below. If we want to say the bread, we say pi oik. But if I want to say this bread, I'd say pi oik. We'll go into the forms in a second. You could put both near forms, meaning both words for this, next to each other, and then that will act as emphasis. So we have this in our liturgy. The priest will say pai oik phi or pai oiki phi if they're trying to go more smoothly between sounds. And this phi here, this pi here is the determiner for the bread. And then this phi here, it also literally means this, but because there's two thises, the best way to render in English is to add the word very, to emphasize this very bread. The far demonstrative pronoun, which is that, in Coptic can also rarely be used to mean he, she, it, or the one. Like the one who blah 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 blah. Or one who blah 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 blah. So notice the letters from last time. This is why we did patterns before. So if it's singular masculine, the key sound was P. Remember that this letter was like a P with an H. P. And this is P. And this is P again. So if it's near, if it's this, it's the key sound is I. And then you put the gender slash number. So pi or current pronunciation phi, tai or current pronunciation thigh, nai. And then if it's a determiner, pi, tai, nai. Notice there's no change in the nai because you can't aspirate an N. You can't put an H sound with an N. And then for the far, that's one. For the pronoun, you use ita. Now that's confusing for current pronunciation. It's not too confusing. It's only confusing in the current pronunciation for the plural form. So current pronunciation, it would be fi, fi, and ni. But in the old pronunciation, depending how old you want to go, right? So if you go 1800s, it would be 1800s is a bad example. 1800s, it would be bt ni. If you go earlier, it'd be pe, te, ne. So the later in the timeline you go, the closer it sounds to the word the, which could obviously lead to some confusion, right? So in the current pronunciation and the late pronunciation, meaning the 1800s, this form sounds exactly the same as the word for the. So based on context, you could tell whether it's the or those. Now, for the word that, there is no way to make it the determiner, meaning there's no easy way to have a prefix to say that bread, for example. So what you have to do is you use the definite article. So for bread, you say pi oik, and then you add either of these phrases after it. Pi oik ete emav, or ete emau, which literally means which is there, right? So it's literally breaking down what the word that means, which is there. So pi oikete emau means the bread which is there, but you would translate that as that bread. Or you could say eti, and that it also pretty much means which is there, but it's shorthand. So pi oiketi would be that bread. Do I have anything here regarding those? No, not yet. Okay. Oh, cool. This was supposed to be a picture of the slide showing the thing from last time. It was supposed to be this, I think. Anyway, possessives. This is going to be slightly annoying, but it's okay. Possessives, like in English, where you could show possessive pronoun. So in English, it would be. Oh, let me finish reading it. In English, you could have possessive pronouns in the form of a determiner, a noun, or of that noun. So I have examples below, and I color coded it for ease. So the determiner would be like your. So if I say your apple, right? So the thing is still an apple, but I'm determining which apple by saying your. So it's your apple. If we're just talking about apples and in context, I could say, but yours is red. I'm referring to your apple, but I'm using it as a noun, quote unquote a noun. Technically, it would be a pronoun. So here in English, it would be yours. Or you could say of that thing. So that would be of yours, right? That apple of yours. Let's not go into this yet. Yeah, let's not go into this yet. We'll do the baby version first. If it'll let me. Okay. So possessive pronouns is my, your, etc. In Coptic, the possessive pronouns denote, this is important, and it's not too confusing. It's confusing at the beginning, but after you get used to it, it's not confusing. It denotes both the gender and number of the thing being possessed and the gender, number, and person of the possessor in that order. What do I mean? If I say the mother has a son, right? So I could say the mother's son, which would mean I could say her son, right? So son is the thing being possessed here. So in Coptic, if I do that, I need to get the gender of the son, which is he, masculine, and then the number. I'm only talking about one son, so singular. So masculine singular, we know it's p, right? But then we need the gender, number, and person of the possessor. So I'm talking about a mother, right? One mother. So feminine, singular, third person. So we just learned third person, singular, feminine is s. So I'm going to have a p and then a s. What's the easiest sound in Coptic to make? Well, that's not clear for you guys, but it's aya. It's the letter that looks like an E. So you shove the E between the two. So pes. Pes would be the form for her, specifically when talking about a masculine thing being possessed by one feminine thing. That is third person. That's not confusing at all, but it's okay. This thing puts all the shortcuts we learned together. What do I mean? So, again, not confusing at all. So the top is what is being possessed, right? So if I'm talking about my table, right? My table, the thing being possessed is table. And in Coptic, table is feminine. Trapeza. It's a Greek word, but that's where the Egyptian Arabic word for table comes from. So trapeza is feminine, and I'm talking about one table, so it's feminine singular, okay? So I'm looking at now this, hopefully my mouse is showing, I know on the recording it's showing, this column, or this subtable, is what we're looking at now. So if I'm saying my table, I'm one person, so I'm going to be in the singular section. And then first person, because it's me. So it would be trapeza would be my table. But if I want to say their table, well, it's still one table, so it's feminine singular. I'm still in the same area. But the possessor is now third person and plural. So it's tu. So it would be tu trapeza. But what if I'm talking about his tables? That guy, for some reason, has multiple tables. So remember, as soon as you get to multiple things, so we're in the possessed section now, when you get to multiple things, you go to plural regardless of the gender. And that sound was N. No, right? So that one guy has multiple tables. So we're in plural, but the possessor is one guy and it's some third guy. I'm not saying your tables, I'm saying his tables. So we go third person, masculine, and now it's nef. So nef trapeza would be his tables. So hopefully you could see, I use the same color coding here as I did in the previous one. So for singular masculine, it's blue like it's here. Feminine singular is pink, and plural is green. And then the first person is red, second person is a darker blue, which I apologize if anyone's colorblind. This is probably horrible for you. And then third is yellow. And then again, singular has a bright gray outline, and then plural has a dark gray outline. So you can see how everything is shoved together. And then whenever a sound is needed, other than first person singular, like I said, that one is an oddball. Other than first person singular, we just add a, right? So p-k, we need something in the middle. Peck. P nothing, we need something in quote unquote in the middle. Pe. P-f, we need something in the middle. Pef. P-s, we need something in the middle. Pes. P-n, we need something in the middle. Pen. P-ten, we need something in the middle. Peten. P-u, we do not need anything in the middle. Poo. Right? So this is where that gets interesting. So when you learn it like this, it's clear why this is poo, as opposed to like I don't know, pev or pel or whatever else you might think it is. It's because you're taking the thing that makes it masculine singular, and then you're taking the suffix for the possessor. So it'll just be poo. So if they own one piece of bread, it would be poo-oik. And then the same thing for these, except that you just put a T or an N in place of the P. Okay, we are not touching this today. At least I don't think we are. So we're done with the baby version. Now we go to the annoying version. And then we'll be almost done for today. So, we mentioned before. So everything that was on that other one, that was the determiner. Okay, so there's multiple ways of saying his. You could say his. Well, this isn't helpful. This is why I put yours in here, because his, almost all of them are the same. So let's use your again. So there's there's yours, and then there's of yours. So in Coptic, we have an equivalent of each. So the one that we covered just before was the determiners. So the determiner, it replaces the article, right? Because remember, article is a determiner. Also, notice they have the same first letter, right? So we have P, T, Ni. So we just replace that iota with whatever we need to make it whoever is owning it. So first person singular, remember that's always the oddball. So instead of an e, it's an a. So it would be pa, ta, na would be my. So the key thing to keep in mind is the first letter is the gender and number of the thing that is possessed, the actual object. And then the last letter in that prefix, not of the whole word, in that prefix would be the gender, number, and person of the possessor. And then, thankfully, I put the chart later, that's why. So it is not thankfully. Anyway, pronoun form. The pronoun form, interestingly, it comes from a form of the word that means belonging to, right? So, current pronunciation, or church pronunciation, fa, tha, na. Old pronunciation, pa, ta, na. So notice the P, T, and N sounds. These were standalone words that mean belonging to. And we use it sometimes, but not too often. So belonging to or of, right? So you can think of it as the word of. But some Coptic words have multiple forms. I'm going to try to see if it's in the dictionary. If you see these two lines in the dictionary, we're learning something new now. If you see those two lines where they're slanted, it looks like an equal sign, but it's slanted. That means it takes a pronoun suffix. What that suffix is depends on what you're dealing with. So it could either be the object or it could be the subject. In this case, it's the object. So if you take fa, tha, na to mean of, and then fo, tho, nu to also mean of, right? When you put the suffix after, it'll be of me, of you, of her. So that is now the object of that prepositional phrase. We'll have this tabulated, so I'm not going to go through it now, but all the suffix pronouns we mentioned before, shove it here, and you should be fine. If you want to say of that noun, very similar. We take the form of that we should all be familiar with, ente. Ente means of, but it has this form which takes a suffix which is nt in the current pronunciation. In old pronunciation, this would be like ente, and this would be ente. I did a horrible job making you hear the difference, but there is a very slight difference between these two. So again, you just put the pronoun here as a suffix. So here, this is what we covered before. I'm not going to go over it again. I went over it in enough detail. I think if I click next, it'll be color-coded again. Yes. Here, the color coding is slightly different. Maybe it's easier to follow the color coding here. I'm color coding what is possessed is in red. So notice it's the first letter. And then the possessor, the information about the possessor is green. So that's the end of the prefix. But if you're using it as a pronoun, so if you want to say yours or hers or does its work? Mine, theirs, right? You would use this form. So whatever we learned before. So yota for I, so foi, fuk, k, fo, nothing, fof, fi, fos, sima, fon, ni, foten, the ten ending, and then fo, right? Now, if you look here, there should be one that is very familiar to us all in Holy Week. So if we look at the feminine singular second person masculine singular form, which will be here, thok. When we say thok, tetigom, nimpio, whatever, right? Thok. Thok means yours. In older English form of yours is thine. That's what thine means, by the way. So thine means belonging to you. It means yours. So we're saying yours is the power, the glory, the blessing. So if you want to use that as a pronoun, you use these forms. Thok. And then here's color coded again. It's showing the possessed is again the first letter. The possessor is the end of it. This is much simpler because this one, it's of whatever, right? This blah, blah, blah of yours. So in the Coptic, if I were to say this bread of yours, I would say pi. Pi is this. Oik, bread, and tak. This bread of yours. Pi, oik, and tak. So everything about the bread is right with bread. I have the pa sound at the beginning of this, pi, so I know the bread's masculine. But I just need to know about the possessor now. So that's why this simplified. So now we just have the information on the possessor, which is the suffix. So here's an example. Oh, is that right? That is really confusing if that's right. I hope that's wrong, but it might be right. So for of mine, it would be nt or ente. Of yours would be entok. So if you look at this in the dictionary, this one I'm pretty sure should show up. If I look up ente, oh, this is gonna be annoying. Okay, let me just go alphabetically. So if I look up ente alphabetically, here, ente or enta, and you see these two dashes, right? These two dashes are saying put a pronoun here. That's what the two dashes means. Is put a pronoun here. So nt is of mine, entok is of yours. Te means of yours to a girl. Entaf is of his, entas is of hers, enton is of ours, and toten is of you all, of yours, but plural, and then entou is theirs. Other ways to form the possessive. So what if you want to do possessive, but it is not uh, a pronoun? So there are two different ways. You could have ente, which means of, which was used previous, and then we have fa, tha, na, which was also used previously. Ente can be abbreviated as either n or m, and the difference between n and m, you switch from n to m if it's a sound you make with your lips, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't make sense. So these are the letters you switch it for. So if it's a vita or a vida, right? That's with your lips. Me, that's with your lips. B, that's with your lips. Remember that this sound was a P originally. It was a P, right? So now it's an F, but notice phi is not considered in this list. So phi, and then psi, right? So if it has a P sound, a B sound, or an M sound, because those all use pretty much just your lips, you switch from na, notice when you make a na sound, your lips are not touching, to a m. So these spelling differences are really just how your mouth works. So if I want to say of this bread, right? So pai oik is this bread. The word for of is en pai oik. But if you would say it more smoothly, you won't say en pai oik, you'd say em pai oik. It's easier to say that way. It's very similar, and it's very common in other languages to do stuff like that. So, do I have an example? Yes. So synonym, right? Synonym means same name, same meaning. But sympathy, notice that N became an M because there's a P after it. So it's the same pattern. Sympathy means having the same feelings, right? So the prefix seen means same, but that last letter could change depending on what follows it. The key thing to know about fa, tha, and na is which form you use has to match the possessed thing. Okay, it doesn't match the possessor. So if I want to say, well, this doesn't match as well, but if we say the angels of 6 wings, so angels is plural, so we will use na to refer to the angels, and then we say 6 wings, which we have it in multiple of our pairs.